So we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to say thank you to the panelists. I really, really appreciate you taking your time to talk about this topic. July is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, and I specifically wanted to talk about the mental health of Black women in leadership. It's a very unique dynamic, and I think some of the things that we do and go through to get in the positions that we get in require different levels of mental wellness and healing. And so that's kind of where this conversation grew from. My name is Nisi, and I'm actually a public health nurse. And one of the platforms that I really preach on is mental health awareness, diversity, and inclusion, and not just how it has affected us as a society, but individually. Like when you get up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror, do you like what you see, kind of thing. And so I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. They're going to do a self-introduction. And if you would like more information from them, this way you know when they're talking, who's talking about what. I'm going to turn that one over. And Brandy, you are first.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Nisi, for this invitation to discuss mental health. I am the founder and CEO of the Lemonade Circle. We're a nonprofit organization here in San Antonio that empowers young women of color with an emphasis on Black females to make lemonade out of life's lemons. And we do that through opportunities with them to career development, leadership development, civic engagement, and community outreach. And so this conversation is really important to me because I have done and seen so much that's going on with our girls and our moms on the mental front right now, especially I know people say we're out of the pandemic, but we're still in it. So a lot of things have changed, and I think this is an important conversation, especially for Black women, because we tend to keep things inside. So I appreciate the opportunity and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Benita. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, there I am. Thank you. Good morning, almost afternoon, everyone. I am Bonita Owens. I am a certified life and leadership coach. I support women leaders in effective communication strategies and executive presence. So basically, I help women to show up strong as leaders by first taking care of themselves and learning how to navigate leadership. And I'm so excited, Nisi, and I can't thank you enough for inviting me to this conversation. This is important to me because I do coach women and women of color, and being a woman in a male dominated, and I say pretty much all industries are male dominated. Even if you have healthcare and education, there's a lot of women, but who's making the decisions is still primarily male. Navigating those waters as a woman is one thing, but as a woman of color, it's a whole other host of challenges. And so this is so important because I think this is the things that we're all carrying, we're all thinking about, but nobody's talking about it. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation. For one, for all of us to understand you are not alone, and that a lot of the things that you're dealing with, other people are dealing with. And if we can do anything to support you and just having the conversation and hopefully have some things that you can walk away with and use and continue for your growth. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Ms. Margaret, you're up.
Good morning, my beautiful queens, and if there's any kings on here as well. Nisi, thank you so much. I am honored to be on this panel representing businesses, and from a perspective of I wear multiple hats. I am the Women's Business Center Director with redefine, and we support and serve not only women's businesses, but all small businesses owners who we like to say we get you ready to be ready and stay ready for opportunity. Whether those opportunities are grants, loans, and contracts. I'm also newly elected the chairman of the board for Port San Antonio, and I also own my business. So as an entrepreneur, I own Al's Gourmet Nuts. What I know for sure is juggling is real. It's not impossible, but mental health is so crucial into every aspect of our lives, both professionally and personally. What I know is when we don't take care of ourselves, we pay a very heavy price for that. And especially African American women, because we have, if you think about it, we have been bred and encouraged to always do more. What's the old saying is you got to work at 200% to be respected at 100%. Well, guess what? We're tired. We're very tired. So for me, being here on this panel to discuss that is so important. We're here at 2023 to say we will do better, we will take care of ourselves because we can and because we should.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So just to kind of give you an idea as how this is going to flow, we have questions throughout the presentation that will appear on the slides in front of you. At the bottom, you'll see the guests in the order in which they're speaking. We have a lot of questions, and we started with a lot more, and we had to kind of bring it back because we just didn't have the time. It helps us if you communicate in the chat, let us know what you like, what sounds good, what doesn't sound good, be your whole true self. I do want to just kind of make sure that we are living in a safe space. So if you want to stay off camera, remove your profile, any of those things, change your name, go ahead and do that. It will be recorded. It will be provided to everyone that has registered. So even if your friend couldn't make it, they can still register and get the recording as well. It is also important that we respect everyone and be kind. There's a lot of heat around this conversation, right? And so we just want to make sure that we create that safe space and set the example. So let's get into it. All right. So these are the topics or the areas of focus that we're going to look at. We're talking about embracing vulnerability and what that looks like, redefining success, healing wounds, and inspiring transformation. Let me just say, these are just 4 of thousands of things that we could really talk about as it relates to Black women in leadership. And this is just a starting point, and I think we could probably have additional conversations about that. But to kick things off, the first question goes to Brandy. When we're talking about facing or embracing vulnerability, the thing that I hear a lot is that's just kind of how I was raised. So I want to ask you, in what ways do the intergenerational cultural practices and traditions, kind of the way we were raised, shape our emotional expressions and vulnerability, especially as Black women and for Black girls?
That's a very amazing question. And I would like to say that, this is a really big thing when we start talking about mental health for Black women, because we were raised, most of us were raised like in a church or with some kind of background where grandma says, you have a problem, you pray about it, you take it to church, you share and things like that. I know one of the things that used to help me as I got older, when I was at church, they had, the point where you can come down and share your testimony. And that testimony part became more important to me as I started realizing, understanding that these people were sharing their story, but not only sharing their story, but how they had either overcome it, how they were in it, and how they were asking for help, right? And they were not just asking for help from God, but they were saying for those people in the church, if you can help me, come stand around me, come support me. And the pastor would ask people to come down and put a circle around them. And that's one reason why Lemonade Circle is a circle, because that circle is, where we're not, once the girls are in it, they're in it, they're not going to not be in it. And so even when they're in college or when they're older, we need to have that sisterhood. We need to have that space where girls feel special and understand that they have people to support them. But also, we had an event 2 weeks ago around hair love and the book Hair Love. But our conversation started with the girls talking about how they were watching their moms be so stressed out. And it really started centering around, I'm watching my mom do all these things. She's looking for scholarships for me. She's working. She's doing all this stuff. And she's so tired, Miss Brandy. She's so tired. And so Pani, who's on the call right now, so hey, sis, she asked him, what does that mean for you, our COO, Pani's our COO? What does that mean for you as you continue as a girl? How are you going to make sure that you're able to balance? And that's the question I feel like we have to feel like we're all trying to be everything all the time, but we don't always realize that our girls are watching us. And so how do we make sure that the girls know that and see that we are resting in the midst of us being super women? That's a big part for me. So that's how I would answer that.
Awesome. Thank you. Benita? Oh, you're on mute. That
Sorry,
mute is gonna get you today.
I said I had an answer, and then Brandy came and sparked something else. But I'm gonna stay with what I was thinking, because it still applies. One of the things what I thought about this when this question is the tradition really of in our culture of women, children being seen and not heard. And so the whole point of, if you mad, you better not show you mad. You better fix your face. If you don't like something, you better not show you don't like it. You better fix your face. You better act glad, right? And so what I realized in that is that or you don't talk when grown folks are talking, right? You sit at the children's table. So what, and this is the thing I'm really passionate about, because when I realized this, I began to see how that showed up in me and showed up in other women. And what I wanted to do for my daughter is that we're waiting for permission to speak from what we were raised in our childhood. We're waiting for permission to show our emotions of what we are feeling and being able to express that, because so many of us weren't allowed to really feel the feels unless we got permission. If it was the emotion that was something that was signed off on by the adult people in our lives, we can express it. But if it was an emotion that was not deemed appropriate and acceptable, we were not able to express it. And so I see so many of us now still not knowing how to express it, not feeling like we have the right to express it, and not understanding that you are an adult now. You have you don't need anyone's permission to speak. You don't need anyone's permission to speak your mind, speak how you're feeling. And so with my daughter, I realized that it was so important for me to give her a voice and to feel the feels and to express displeasure just as much as we allow them to express happiness. If you don't like something, okay, you don't like it, right? And being able to have that freedom. And I see that in the women that I work with and that I talk to, we're still waiting on the permission. We're still trying to grapple with our emotions because we were not culturally, that is something that was not accepted in the way we were raised.
Absolutely. Thank you, Benita. Margaret?
And I just have to agree with both Brandy and Bonita. And to add to that is that we were told, encouraged to be strong, but the being strong was not to speak up, not to have a freedom to say what we want, the freedom always to go with our gut instinct. We were chosen, or like I said, encouraged to say, hey, you can do these things, but it was always with a step behind or a temperament. It's kind of like we almost had to ask for permission with certain things. And if you were the oldest, you were always encouraged. It was almost, we had to be these perfect people. And I love the church and laying hands and so forth, but it was also, well, you can't tell them everything. So there was always something you had to keep behind when you felt that way. So to be this perfect person, but also not to share. And I think that's that generational, and birth order is real. I tell everybody that I'm the oldest. So, and especially being a girl child, as I like to say, there were 3 girls and 1 boy. I saw the difference as I got older, what my brother could do versus the 3 girls could do. And it was very interesting that we were told, because we're protecting you. But were you protecting us? But also we were being held back in that way. So that voice, and we were always not encouraged to find that voice within us. We are all born with natural talents, but guess what? We're not encouraged to utilize those natural talents. So I would say, if you look at that intergenerational culture practices, it was be all you can be, but the word but, to me, especially when it comes to girls, it was always the BUT word, ... So that's when I think of this. And again, all of the comments that both Brandy and Benita shared, and it goes back to, yes, you can do all this, but.
Yeah, definitely. So Benita, I want to move to the next question with you. How does the concept of strength, or as we like to say, being a strong friend, often associated with Black women? And how does it intersect with the challenges of being vulnerable? So how can I be the strong one and be vulnerable at the same time? What happens to us?
Ooh, so I'll never forget a few months, no, I guess it was earlier this year. There's a young lady on Instagram who is a weather reporter in Dallas. And I remember her saying, I don't want to be strong. Don't call me strong. I don't want to be strong. And she's a woman of color, a Black woman. And that's the first time I had really heard us talk about this finally, like, we're done being strong. We're done with that. And we are strong, right? We are strong, but what does that mean? And so this is a great question, because a lot of us who are go-getters, we are that strong friend. And what happens is there's an assumption. It's a double-edged sword, right? Because we just suck it up and drive on. We're gonna do what needs to be done, no matter what, come hell or high water. And so then there's an assumption that we give off, and we're not trying to give it off. There's an assumption that we don't need anything. There's an assumption that we don't get tired. There's an assumption that we don't cry, we don't get discouraged. There's an assumption there. And so then what happens is, when people begin to, the other part of it is, we get used to people requiring us being strong. We get used to people expecting a certain thing from us. And so then we don't want to show the vulnerable side. Many times we have the strong woman has friends that they are always the go-to for. They're the go-to, I call the go-to girl, right? You're the go-to, and you don't have friends that come, who's my go-to? Okay. And so it's really important to understand that that's a vicious cycle that happens. And it's just us doing what we got to do. Like Brandy said, it's us seeing our mamas make it happen. So what do? We make it happen. However, it's really important to realize that, one, nobody's calling you, checking on you partly, sis, because they don't think you need anything. You haven't shown you need anything. You haven't said you need anything. And in our minds, we're like, don't people see? No, they do not. They see your strength. They see your talent. They see all the things you're coming with, but they don't see what's behind the curtain. And so it really is important for us to stop and say, wait, is it because people aren't there for me, or have I let them in? Have I let them know? And sometimes people around us, they don't think, because we're giving out so much, they don't think they have anything to give us. And so it's important to make a space to give people an opportunity to show up for you by saying, hey, I need to talk. I need whatever. Sometimes you need physical things. Maybe you need somebody to bring you a meal. Maybe what do you need? And be willing to show that and express that and give people the opportunity to be there for you, just like you there for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Benita. Margaret?
Oh, Benita, that is awesome. I will add to that is that I think a lot of times strong women are viewed as, like you said, we're just invincible. We don't need help. What could you give us? I'm going to challenge us to say, what can we give ourselves? Give the gift of, I need help. Giving us personally, because I think if we can't give it to ourselves, how can we ask others for help and support? And I've learned that a lot over the last couple of decades. I give myself permission to ask. And if I can take care of that, then I can ask others to support me. We have to take the veil off of mental health in 2023. If you say, I'm seeing a therapist or a counselor, that's even if you'll say it out loud. People will say, well, are you crazy? They won't say what's wrong. But I love when they say, well, are you that crazy? You need to see someone. So what happens is people don't share. And part of that, the challenge of being vulnerable is that you don't want to be vulnerable because you don't think you get any help. So asking ourselves that question, give ourselves permission to accept help first before we can ask someone to help us. And knowing that mental health is not a stigma, it is a sickness. If I had a heart condition, wouldn't be any problem. But when I say mental health, oh my God. And don't want to offend anyone, but the power of prayer, I am the king and queen of the power of prayer. But what I know for sure, God wouldn't put these tools here for us to utilize them. So I would say, think of that process of what have you given yourself permission and approval before we go out and seek elsewhere.
Awesome. Thank you. Brandy?
Just piggybacking off of what they said, but one thing that I want to add is, a couple of months ago, I had asked myself, as much as I pour into Lemonade Circle, what if I pour it into myself, that amount, right? And I'm, being vulnerable and saying what I want to say. I started thinking, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to pour into myself. Would that look like a vacation? Would that look like me getting massages? I think a lot of it is that people say we need to do self-care, but I don't think we know all the time what that looks like for a long period of time. I might know, I'm gonna just go get my nails done. I'm just gonna go and get a massage. Well, that's taking care of yourself at the moment. But what is long-term self-care really look like? And our kids really don't know. So we give them these tactics that are really a hit or miss in the moment type thing, but we haven't equipped them with long-term care. And one thing about what being in Lemonade Circle, I'm always very honest with the girls. I tell them Miss Brandy is tired. Miss Brandy is on medication for anxiety. Miss Brandy has been depressed. Miss Brandy goes to therapy. I'm going to tell you, because if I didn't have those things, I couldn't be where I am. And when I'm missing one of those things, I'm thrown off my schedule. Because I don't want them to think, because like I said in the comments, social media is killer. It makes everything look perfect. It makes us look like we're doing all these things. And if I saw my profile, if I saw my own profile, I would think, man, she got it going on. She's this, that. But over here, I'm just like dying. Like I'm just tired, and we have to figure out how we communicate that effectively. And having spaces like this is important, and having spaces with our girls and hearing leaders, all the leaders that we are saying, hey, we're tired. We get overwhelmed too, is really important too, so that they can see you look strong. I may look strong, but I'm not as strong as I appear, right?
Absolutely. That's so that self-care part is, big. We know that temporary fix, right? But we don't know long-term, what do I do to just love me? And so that was a great point. I appreciate that. I believe this is our last vulnerability question. Any personal stories or examples of how being vulnerable has been stigmatizing or discouraged within the Black community? And I specifically want to say that this does not go against, our own community or love, but sometimes we do things to ourselves just because we just don't know better, don't have the skill set to do better. But have you heard of or witnessed or been a part of anything that has been stigmatizing or discouraging for you within our Black community?
And I'm gonna start off with the back. It has to do with counseling and therapy. Have had that personal shame when it came to me and or members of my family saying that, hey, we're seeking therapy. And it was almost as though we're going to be shamed because you didn't pray hard enough. Why do you need to go out and quote unquote tell a white person about your business? Not thinking that counselors come in all different colors, including African Americans. To me, the initial shock and to hear those words, I was shamed, but thankfully I was at a healthy place, unhealthy but healthy place that knew I needed to continue on. And that shame came from within my family. It also came from outside of my family. It also came from members of my church. And that was very difficult. And again, I think it's coming from a place of lack of knowledge and distrust with our whole medical system.
Yeah.
We understand and we know that. We talk about the mortality rates with Black moms. I was almost one of those statistics of not being here. And the mental health it's even more difficult because things like high blood pressure will kill us. And when we cannot de-stress and find that, but the vulnerability there within our community is that we're shaming each other for getting help. COVID has made that change quite a bit. COVID has opened those doors and windows up. I'm not saying they're free flowing, but they're flowing a lot more than they did before COVID. I've actually heard fewer people say, why are you getting counseling? They've said, good for you to get counseling. So to me, that's that, stigmatizing and discouraging within the community. But again, I think that's just a cultural and generational approach because our parents and great grandparents and grandparents did not really have those options.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brandy.
Same thing. I think the connections with trying to seek help, period. There's a lot of people struggling right now. A lot of people that are their account may be on this phone right now, may be in the negative. They're trying to balance how they're going to eat for the rest of the week, or know people that are doing that or dealing with those types of things. And those are very real things, even for people that, quote unquote, are successful. Saying that I need help, period, is important because help is hard to say, I feel like, especially as Black women, because we are like, we make it happen. Like even my girls be like, mommy, you gonna find a way. And I might find a way, but it don't mean I don't still need help, right? And when we allow ourselves to accept the help, then we start feeling like, oh my God, this woman is looking at me like I'm a terrible mom, I'm a terrible wife, I'm a terrible coworker because I said I need to take a day off. I need to just give me, like I told my mom just a minute ago, I said, after this presentation, I'm going to go sit under a tree and I'm going to eat by myself. That has become my own time. Nobody's in the car with me. Nobody's doing things, but I get to be by myself and not be asked, not by my children, not by my husband. I don't answer any phone calls. I just sit there and have some time for myself because that's me saying, and my mom, she knows now, my husband too, and the girls, sometimes they say, "Can I go with you?" And I say no, because I need help for Brandy to calm down. And in between all of the different things coming, I just need to find 30 minutes, you know? But that's my way of saying I need help and I'm trying to help myself before I continue with my day, you know? And I think we just need to accept where we are more and not, if there's a woman online or in your group chat that says, "Hey, I'm struggling. Does anybody have, the package of, size 2 diapers?" I can get that to you. Because when I might be able to get it to you now, but for me, I might need something else later. And so just supporting each other is just really, really important in our community. Because one thing I do want to say is we have to remember in San Antonio, we are the minority of the minority. So that is a whole nother thing. We need to learn how to uplift each other because we are oftentimes the only Black, the only this, the only in every room. So that in of itself is a mental break. So we need to figure that out. So how we can help each other with those things.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandy. Benita?
Okay, so I have a personal story, which is going to kind of take us in a little bit of different direction. But when we talk about vulnerability and stigma, this what came to mind. Within our community, Margaret talked about, you don't tell your business. It's so true in our culture. However, even within our families, there's things that we don't talk about. And so what it reminded me of, I think this was 2019. I have a cousin who is lesbian, and she's been a lesbian since I was little. When I didn't understand what lesbianism was. And I remember that it was hush, like, oh, and she'd always live far away. We didn't talk to her much. And when she showed up, I didn't know what to say, because of course I grew up in the church too, right? And that's this whole warring around, what do I say to her? And I know she's a lesbian, but how do we talk to her? Like almost like she was an alien. And just last year, no, 2019, I realized like, this is my cousin. We don't treat her the same as everyone else. And it was never a thing where, to say you don't talk to her, but it was almost like an elephant in the room. Like nobody talked about it. And I knew her mother passed away that I was pretty close to. And that connection kind of broke. And so she lives in New York City. And when I was there, I said, I got to do something. I can't walk around like this, hemmed up, and her feeling, alienated. And I had a conversation with her. And I said, when I found out who, part of who you are, I didn't know what to say and I didn't know how to process it. And I feel like there's been this disconnect and you're kind of over here across the country and you're my cousin, but nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever talks to you in the same way. And I apologized to her. I said, I was little and grew up. I grew up as an adult and didn't know how to handle this thing that nobody talked about. And of course, homosexuality, that's another big stigmatizing thing in our culture. And to have that conversation, it really did something for me. And it also did something for her. I mean, tears came to her eyes and she's like, thank you. And I said, I just didn't know. And I love you. You're my cousin. I don't want to feel this thing between us. And so that's another thing in terms of vulnerability. There's so many stigmas that we don't talk about and know how to talk through because of the way we were raised. And people in our own circles are feeling ostracized and we don't even know it.
Beautiful. So what you guys don't know is behind the scenes, because all of the responses are so good and juicy. I secretly messaged Benita. I was like, can I skip you on this one? And she was like, yeah, but I got something good. And I was like, well, I can't do it now. And so I'm so glad that you did not allow me to skip you. And I appreciate it. And I won't be skipping anyone else because we'll just have to go over in time or do a part two. I don't know. I want to move us into the next space. And this is that healing wound space. And I love this quote by Issa Rae that says, Black women ain't bitter. They are just tired of being expected to settle for less. And the other thing as a mental health professional that I want you guys to know and understand is when Black women are depressed, it doesn't present in that very traditional Western psychology of sadness or being separated or isolation. It presents as agitation and frustration and what other people would say is angry. So when you see what we call an angry Black woman, what you see is probably a Black woman that's dealing with some level of depression. But because generationally she couldn't be sad, right? She just had to get it done. She just became frustrated. If you've ever had to get something done, urgency and anger kind of sit in the same space. And that urgency and anger is what allows you to push through whatever your feelings are to get something done. So if you are carrying a wide load or heavy load and you have to do the things, you just have to do them, that's the expectation, and you are also depressed and performative, what happens is you just appear to be angry to people outside of your space. And so I just want to lead into this kind of healing wounds section. And Brandy, you're the first up on this question. How can we navigate the challenges of confronting healing from our historical traumas and systematic injustices while understanding a strong sense of self and culture identity?
I think you said it earlier. Or was said earlier, just speaking up, giving voice, being present, saying what we need, knowing our value. One thing that I try to, instill in my own children is that you always understand that you should feel heard and supported and valued, right? And with that, if you're not, who do you call or who is in your circle of support that can help you get you there, right? So, I have had to choose within the last 6 months. Do I choose myself? Or do I choose, to be honest, do I choose the money, right? Because a lot of times as Black women, we have to make the decision of staying in a space that allows us to feed our families, versus the place that allows, but still will devalue us and we're not feeling loved and supported, or go into a space where I know who I am, I get to be who I am. I'm going to say what I say and I mean what I say. And that's what I feel like Issa Rae's done, right? And a lot of Black women, even Tabitha Brown, when she turned down that opportunity to have a cooking show, she's like, I'm not changing who I am to conform to your standards. And I'm sure would have been a nice little pocket change for her. But since then, God has blessed her, with Target and all these other things, but she chose herself versus going through a situation where she was going to be constantly reminded of traumas or, things that are unjust in her industry and around. But like you said, when we start speaking up, people think we have an attitude. People think, oh, well, you just getting loud for no reason. Or maybe you haven't heard all of the benefits and I can't believe you're turning that down. And you have to step back and say, yeah, I'm turning it down and I mean what I say. And even with the girls in Lemonade Circle, they always tell me, Miss Brandy, I'm just asking a question in class and my teacher thinks I have an attitude. I'm just trying to figure out the next step. And she thinks she's already ready to send me to the office. And all I did was ask her a question. But she's thinking, oh, you ain't gotta say it like that. You need to get out. And these are, nice, well-mannered girls. But I'm like, is it that you think she has an attitude? Or are you hearing what you want to hear? Or are you even hearing that she's saying, I need help in some other kind of way? And so when we start looking at our girls and what they're dealing with, because we're dealing with it at the career level and they're dealing with it at a school level. And we are going so far backwards these days, but the level of things that they're dealing with in school is mirrors a lot of what maybe our grandparents and things were dealing with. And they do not have the education or the verbiage to really navigate those issues, because this is the first time they're really going through these traumatic situations on top of coming out of a pandemic. So it's really important that we empower them to have voice and say, when you see something, say something. When you feel something, mean something. And I said what I said, and I meant what I said. And if your mama don't come up there to help you out, Miss Brandy will come up there, somebody will come up there, because you don't deserve to be mistreated in any kind of way, because you are who you are. So
Love that. Margaret?
Yes. I'm almost like drop the mic. I can't say anything else, Brandy, on that. But what I will say on this, I think it's very important. You've heard me say this from the beginning. This actually starts with us individually, that we are valuing ourselves. I'm probably older than almost everybody on this line. And the thing that I know and I've learned the most, until we value ourselves, we cannot expect anyone else to value us. I love it. Me saying no when I mean it and going forth. For the first time in a couple of years, I took off 7 days from the office, no phone calls, no emails, none whatsoever. First 2 days, I did have a panic attack, and I'm going to admit that. But guess what? I knew the work that I do would not bring death to anyone. I took off those 7 days. I recharged myself. And I had to work on myself coming back last week to not to feel guilty, because the guilt monster was trying to pick up when I walked in the door to say, you have almost 1,000 emails, X number of voicemails, and so forth. And again, I had a message that I was out, therefore you knew to really email it if you want to be back on the top of the list again. My point in saying all that is that I actually took time for myself to recharge my batteries. I tell that to my clients all the time. We have to start with ourselves. We have to be worth it. The value has to be seen within ourselves. No one else will see that. I need to make this quick comment on the angry Black woman. Someone challenged me the other day and said this. They said, where did you get that from? The angry Black woman. Their point is that we've been bred and we've repeated that. Well, if we speak up, we're going to be dictated as the angry Black woman. So already in our minds, we're not going to speak up because we don't want to be perceived differently. That was powerful for me, because who made that statement? It wasn't us. It was to make us think and stop and not speak up. Just as you said, Brandy, the young girls, they don't have the tools. We have to help them with that. But the teachers and so forth and everyone else around them, and they do it with our Black boys as well. I'm a boy mom. If we ask a question, even nicely, we still get that perception. So it's a no-win. So for me, what I've learned is that's empowering myself to do what I need to do, but reaching out for that support as well when we need it. And I think that is the key to healing some of these traumas. And the last thing is, we are not going to heal in one day. This didn't happen in one day. It's like I tell myself, I need to lose 50 pounds. Baby, this has been happening for a couple of decades. So it's not going to happen in a couple of months. So for me, the healing, I'm not willing to wait 10 years, but I know that I will work on healing every day in small bites.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Benita?
All right. Yes, I'm going to kind of draw from something Margaret just said. One of the tenets of what I do with working with women is about putting yourself first. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first. And
Yes.
in that, it's about making time to be still, making time for yourself, making time every single day to be quiet, to listen, to analyze. A lot of times we are not even analyzing our thoughts, our emotions. We're not even analyzing, you talk about historical traumas. We haven't even given ourselves permission to label things traumatic that were traumatic. I'm sorry, if you were beat with a extension cord or a belt, that's traumatic trauma. Let's label it. Let's label it. Let's change the narrative about what has happened and not be afraid. I'm sorry, Big Mom and them said that the old times were better. I differ. Not all of them were better. Some of the things that we went through, we are functioning on the outside, but we're walking around hurt and traumatic and broken on the inside. So just because we might not have gone to jail doesn't mean that everything that happened was the way it needed to happen. Now, they did the best they could with what they had, but let's give yourself permission to change the narrative. Call things for what they really are. Give yourself permission to look at your emotions. Learn. If you need help to start being able to label your emotions, but you got to be still and quiet in order to even understand how. When I start to meditate, and I didn't meditate because I grew up, the meditation is of the devil. And my spirit was telling me something different. And when I started a practice of meditation, it changed my life. And for a long time, I wouldn't talk about it openly because of the way I grew up. But let's change the narrative. Everything that Big Mama said ain't true, ain't the best. And we love Big Mama, but she only knew what she knew. And what we're doing is we're trying to define our lives based on some narrative that is outdated and no longer applicable till today. But you have to give yourself permission to do that and rewrite your story. Rewrite your story. It ain't all bad. And we have a beautiful culture. Accept, take what is, celebrate you, celebrate what you went through, but rewrite your story and have that confidence to do that.
I love that. Can I just say, when you talk about our culture, I just want to, give kudos to us because, not to sound big-headed or cocky or anything, but we set the standard as Black women. When someone can sing, they sound like a Black woman singing. When someone can dress, they sound innovative like a Black woman walking through the room. And so it's okay to be great. It's okay that we have this greatness. And I think that the challenge or the conflict that we're having is, we know that there's greatness, but we've been told to be quiet about it for so long. And now we don't even know what it's supposed to look like, right? And so when we think about success and what success means to us, it's challenging because for a lot of us, success is the car we drive, or the zip code we live in, or the purse we carry, right? Kind of those visual things, because for years, other successes like home ownership, business ownership, all of those things were not accessible. So we took what we could get to visually have that appearance. So when we move into the section talking about redefining success, Benita, I want to continue with you. What societal and cultural factors have influenced the traditional perceptions of success and how it's impacted our self-worth or aspirations as Black women? And that's a mouthful, so if you need a second, I can
All your questions are a mouthful, Niecy.
I'm getting excited now. The volume, could you tell the volume went up in the room and everybody kind of perked up in their chair like that's it, that part right there. There's a comedian who talks about how Black women especially have their own way of identifying other Black women or speaking well into other Black women. And she talks about when we give compliments, we don't even say, "Oh, you're looking great today." She says, we say stuff like, "I see you, polka dot," right? And so, but that's us. And you could feel the shift. So I'm excited. So go ahead, Benita.
There's so many ways to go with this, but what this says, what I think about is that the fact that, of course, women, we are the most educated, we are higher numbers in colleges and universities and all of that. And I think a lot of Black women, we got the degrees, we've got all the things. And I remember white women talking about this years ago, where we're ambitious, we have all the things, but there's some other things that we haven't tapped into, right? When we're talking about relationships, and so many of us are single, right? And all of those things. And then, so you got this strong Black woman, and I have a sister who is a professional and she's still single. And you got these strong Black women that are like, well, I got all this stuff. I got all the stuff. I got the degrees. I got the house. I got the this. And I think what is happening is that there are so many other things that we didn't know to strive for that aren't external, right? We didn't know to strive for being self-actualized, what makes me happy. Growing up, it wasn't about what makes you happy. What gives you good benefits and what was steady, right? And we just did it. We just did what we were told to do. And so this generation is coming up is a little different. So I think a lot of times where it's, well, I should, the struggle is, I should be happy. I got all the things. I should be grateful. But why am I not fulfilled? What's going on? Why don't I feel wanted? Why can't I find a mate? And all those types of things, right? And should I date outside my race? Because if I can't find any Black men, and that whole conundrum, that's a whole nother webinar in and of itself. But but it's really like, are we all generations want to do better than the one before, but there were so many things that we didn't know to strive for, which is joy, happiness, vacation time, doing those things that fuel our spirit and our emotions, and not just finances.
Absolutely, so true. Margaret?
I'm going to answer this question, but I'm going to take it from a little different perspective, in that I feel like we're in a part of our lives and society where we have too many choices. And I say that because we have so many choices, we've cast this net that we have to do all of these things. Back in the day with our grandparents and great grandparents, you had a couple of different paths. So you had this thought process. As my grandmother would say, go get your college degree, get your good government job, and the benefits. As you said, Bonita, I did that and did something else. But I think what we're looking at today in 2023, we're so freaking tired because we're trying to do everything. I speak to young girls all the time, and I said, yes, you can have everything, but you can't have it on the same day. That is the reality that we need to tell ourselves, because we have this little thing as women called this biological clock, but we also get this degree, get this job, and the clock catches up with us, and we're like where we're at. And then we're cast as this selfish people because we didn't do this or that. And as Black women, again, we're really being told that we have to do everything. That is the redefining of success. You have to do everything, no matter what. And I love what someone posted in is that, that college degree was the norm. Well, now that's changed. Well, it's changed because they want the needle to change. That's why when we look at where we're at now, we need to ask ourselves, what do we want to do? I tell my sons all the time, there's no more cradle to grave job. No more cradle to grave job. So you have to have a job in or a business and several other hustles, but do the things that bring you joy. Do not do them just because they bring you money, because they will catch up with you and you will hate it and despise it. And I tell my sons and all the folks I meet, again, as I said, you can have everything. You just can't have it on the same day and sometimes the same season. So I would like for us to step back and say, stop allowing others to define us. Let's start with defining and identifying what our strengths are. We all have strengths. And for those who not read the book, please read the book Strength Finders. It is so important. I've had my sons to read it because we have to focus on our strengths. Yes, we need to shore up our weaknesses, but we have to focus on our strengths. When we're focusing on our strengths, defining who we are less impacted by societal and cultural factors. When you know who you are, it's not a perfect definition, but it's going to give you a better path and it's surely going to help your mental health. And for me, the new wealth is your health, mentally and physically. And God knows I love to win the lottery tonight or tomorrow, whenever it's planned. But what I know for sure, if I win it and I have a heart attack and have a stroke, the one thing that money's going to do is going to put me in, it's going to have me good nursing home care. That's all it's going to do. So it's that health of the wealth that we need and identifying who we are and what our strengths are.
Thank you so much. Brandy?
Sorry, my mouse was all over the other side. Like I have said this too, and I continue to say it, and think, a year ago, probably in a few weeks, I made a decision to leave my full-time job and go part-time with Lemonade Circle to really try to get it to the next level. And I'm still, I adjunct at Texas A&M for financial things, but that's still not equal to what I was getting when I was at UIW. But when I look at my fulfillment and my spirit, I'm so much more fulfilled in my space because I'm doing what brings me joy. And I'm doing what I know God is telling me to do because he shows me every day. Do this, do that. And I say, Lord, give me strength. And he does every day. Lord, make a way. And the way he's made a way, ironically, not ironically, is I've had to use, and this is, again, I tell everybody my business is fine, but I've had to use my retirement, right? I've had that retirement and I went into it and I've almost depleted the whole thing. And it was funny because I was talking to a girl who's in the Gen Z generation. And I was telling her, I was like, you know what? I'm so stressed. I need to just find me a job, a 9 to 5, and get this $100,000 and, be okay with it. And she was like, why? And I told her, I was like, girl, because I don't have my retirement. Are you crazy? Like, what am I going to do? And she was like, girl, who's to say that you're going to be alive to use that retirement? Who's to say that you're going to be in a position that retirement is going to directly benefit you? And you could be dead in that retirement, go to your husband or to your kids, but you're using it now with what God has given to you now to do what he's called you to do. And for me, she even said, she said, y'all's generation is so caught up on the benefits and doing this, but our generation, we just want it. We just do it. If I don't have this, I don't have that. That's okay. That's okay. But just listening to her enthusiasm about her space and me over here stressing out like, oh my God, in my retirement, every time I get a check, an envelope in the mail, I'm just scared to look at it. But she just her perspective made me think like, we need to, like you said, Margaret, and like you said, Benita, we need to use and take what God has given us in this moment to do what makes us happy, to do what brings us joy, because white people do it all the time. That's how they do their things. That's how they become successful. They go into that retirement, they go into those 401ks, they deplete those out, they build their businesses and they put it right back. And that's what God is going to do. We just get scared because we haven't been taught that. We've been taught to play it safe, to walk the line, to stay on this side. But our world is changing. And to change with it, we have to be willing to dive into those unknown spaces so that we can continue to grow in where we are now.
I love that. And it's so true. Different times we were raised, hold on to those benefits, get that good government job, all of those things, and it just doesn't match with the quality of life. So the other thing that I want to talk about, you talked about, kind of the difference in the different generations and such. I'm hoping that most people are familiar with the Black tax, right? So a lot of us, we get ourselves to a certain point or established, and there is this kind of bag that we are carrying, or this tax that we are carrying, especially as Black women in leadership, that says, okay, I've made it to this certain space, and now I need to make sure I reach back and bring folks with me, or when I come into that space, I need to have extra bandwidth for all the people that I'm supposed to bring with me. And Margaret, I'm going to start with you. How do we balance that? How do we balance pursuing what's good for us with that kind of cultural Black tax? And if we're the pioneer, Margaret, in certain spaces, how do we say, okay, I made it here in this part, and I did what I needed to do to get here, on my shoulders. How far back are we reaching to help other people? Or how much extra space are we creating? And then what does that do to us as that leader in those spaces?
I'm gonna have to smile on this question because I did answer this a couple of weeks ago at a wonderful reception, and I was being honored for serving as board chair. What I said is, and I say this all the time, I may be the first, but I don't want to be the last. But more importantly, I want to build a pipeline for others to come into. My favorite is Harriet Tubman, because as she said, I can't save everybody. But what I can save, and at this point, what we can fill the pipeline up with, is those who want to be there. Sometimes we get caught up, and I know I'm guilty of this as anyone, is that when we're the only one there, we represent the whole world. If any of you all have ever read Arthur Ashe's autobiography, for those who are young who don't know, first African-American Black tennis player, his autobiography said tennis wasn't the hardest thing, being Black was, because every time he was on that court, every time he made a move, he represented all Black people. That's a heavy burden if you think about it, because you decide on, I can't make a mistake because they're not going to let any more in. Well, I'm going to turn that around and say, keep filling that pipeline. They won't have a choice. So guess what? If I do make a mistake, I got 20 people behind me that can come in. When I succeed, I got another 20 people behind me for the succession plan. So for me, I look at this as a Black woman balancing the pursuit of that individual success. Always have that tribe, and I do have a great tribe around me that will uplift me, because the Black tax is there and it's real. My thing is, I'm not going to try to eliminate that because that's too much energy. I'm going to focus on my 20% rule, which is We're going to make this happen with the people who want to make it happen. Cannot save everyone. I cannot appease everyone. And that's just not only in our own culture, but outside of that. As women, we are basically bred to say, take care of everyone in the room, make sure they're comfortable. Benita, I think you said that about putting the mask on first. We forget that every time I get on a plane ride, I think about that. I'm like, hell, I don't put my own mask on. I'm putting everybody's mask on. That's why I'm tired. Because we're taking care of everyone else. We have to change our mindset. What I'm saying in my place business here with the Women's Business Center is I will no longer survive. I will thrive. When you're in survival mode, it's a whole different mode. When you're in thrive mode, it's a whole different mindset. Being in thriving mode will get you through the lowest and the toughest of time. But when you're in that survival mode, you're like, oh my God, praise God if I make it out. You hear the word you said, if. But when you're in thriving mode, you're like, I'm going to make it out. I'm going to make it through. So for me, personally and professionally, it's about being in that thrive mode. Good days or bad days. Because what I know for sure, God wakes me up the next day. Guess what? I got another day to do it again.
Absolutely. Whew. Thank you so much. We will get the Arthur Ashe book. Do you happen to know the name? Or we'll get it. We'll make sure everybody has it, and we'll put a link in there so everybody can get to it too when we send the recording, to make sure that everybody has that as well. Brandy?
Yeah, I think that creating the balance and making sure that we are uplifting those that come behind us, but we're also providing the space for those who are right beside us, and making sure that we're elevating and celebrating each other and the wins that we're making is really, really important. Because as we all do our different things, like all of these women that are in there, everybody in this room is doing amazing work in some field that another person, some of us, that's just not our wheelhouse, right? But if we were to really uplift each other and say, this is what you do well, so let's use you in this space to make sure that you are being celebrated and honored for all the things you're doing. That puts our society in a whole nother place. And there's always conversation around the Black dollar stays in the Black community far less minutes before it's, before they are than it is when we look at spending it in other communities. But when we really start uplifting each other and understanding that we have so much power and so much wealth amongst each other, and how that can lead to other opportunities for the youth that are behind us, but also uplift my sister that is trying to build her foundation, her business right beside me, will be a better at a better place as a culture. But we do have that, we have to understand that, like Margaret said, I can't bring everybody along with me, but I also know that I can't stay in this place forever. Because I tell the girls all the time, Miss Brandy, in 5 years, I don't want to be sitting in this chair because I don't know what y'all will need in 5 years. Somebody else needs to come beside me and take the organization to the next level. I don't want to hold it, because that means that the organization will be stagnant. So we need to always be mentoring and supporting and outreach and sister circles and these opportunities like this, where we're in rooms and spaces that are safe to say, what do you need to get to the next level? And maybe I know somebody who you don't know that can help you get to that next level. And that opens the door to more opportunities for you. But we just need to have those conversations so that we are thriving, like Margaret said, off of each other, but also uplifting the kids and the people behind us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brandy. Anita?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different, kind of a more close to home point of view of this that I see that you all kind of touched on. I think one thing that can hold especially Black women down more than anything is our immediate community, our family and our friends. And we start wanting to pull people up. And what ends up happening is people start to weigh us down. And so the thing that came to me was about anything out of balance, out of alignment is not good, right? You've made your mark, you've done the things, and you have reached a level of success. But the thing is are you doing, what's your motive? Are you doing it out of guilt or out of grace? A lot of times we still trying to get Pookie. He been in out of jail 5, 6, 7 times. Okay, I'm just keeping it 1,000. And we are so enthralled a lot of times in the drama of our community. And it's not, we're not doing any, we're enabling people, and we are causing more stress to ourselves because we're doing it out of guilt, not out of grace. And so one of the things that I think is so important for us to realize is that, listen, we can't, like Margaret said, it's not about stop being the rescuer. They need to put something in. They need to bring something to the table for you to even support them. But what we do is we let people weigh us down. We can't do that. And so it really is like, hey, I'm blessed to be where I am. I made choices. I did what I needed to do. And it's not up to me to make somebody feel better about where they are by me allowing them to weigh me down, by me apologizing for my success, by me apologizing for my education, whatever that is. And if we're not careful, our immediate community will do that to us. And so then we are, hiding our light, we feeling bad about ourselves. And it's not even about you, it's about them. And so sometimes we got to learn how to separate ourselves from some of those things, go where people can celebrate you and give you, Brandy said, you got to go in spaces where you can continue to grow so you can even have the resources to help those people. But you can't continue being that because people making you feel guilty or somebody going to think I'm better than them. You can't stop taking other people's stuff, leave their stuff with them. You do what you need to do to take care of you so you can show up, and don't let people guilt you into continually rescuing them and they going back and jumping back in the water right after you get them out. No, we got to stop it.
Enough said. Okay. All right. So we have just 3 more questions. And these 3 questions, I appreciate you all that could stay. It will be recorded, will be sent out. These are our final wrap-up questions. When I'm reading the questions, our guests are going to drop in their contact information. Please connect with them and do us one more solid. Once you connect with them, share your experience on the platform of your choice today. Let people know that conversations are being had about this topic, and it might ignite some other areas that you could have different conversations with. And always give us feedback. Like, you have the email from the registration, let us know what was good, what wasn't good, what was great. We really want to improve, and I just feel like this probably is not a one and done. We'll probably be back. So I'm going to move us into our final 3 questions. This one is for Brandy. This one, and I don't know if you saw that, you can see the crown in the middle, because this is why I felt like this question was appropriate for you. How can Black women inspire transformation within their own communities for impactful initiatives or projects that have driven change? Or what have you done to do that, and what could someone else do?
Love that picture. I'm about to steal it. What Lemonade Circle is worked on, constantly working on, we're always doing something new and different. And one of the initiatives that we really tried to champion was the Crown Act that was passed recently here in Texas, and we thank God for that. I think it goes into effect September the 1st. But we wanted young girls, young boys, men, women, everyone to feel confident about their crown. And the Crown Act was created years ago but it was a space that allowed initiative that was policy that was put forth to just make sure that we weren't being discriminated against for our hair in the workplace or in schools. And so we are, I feel like, what we can do as Black women, we just need to support each other in whatever, initiatives that we feel like are bringing that change and making sure that we are present and that we are being positive, sharing, of course, all the things that we do. I'm always saying too, like we do so many good things in San Antonio. I feel like a lot of times people don't support them in the ways that they need to. Because I don't know if a lot of times I feel like it's because people, even though we have social media, I don't feel like it's like the space where everybody is looking, because some like Facebook, some like this, some like that. And because of algorithms, these conversations like the one we're having get buried beneath all these other things. And then when you find out about it, you're like, oh my God, I wish I would have known about that. So it's not like people don't want to be a part of that. Um, it's just that we don't always know what's going on. But Limiting Circle, the girls got a lot of positive feedback. They felt very supported. And just the work that, we're doing as an organization, I feel like is being celebrated and, appreciated in our community. And I appreciate that. But I know we still have a lot of work to do, especially when it comes to youth in our schools and what's going on in education, both at the state level and at the federal level. So we have a lot of work to do, but together we can make that, turn our lemons into lemonade, as they say.
Beautiful. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Margaret, your question: in what ways can mentorship and empowerment programs specifically tailored to Black women contribute to inspiring transformation and growth?
Thinking about this question, we think about membership and empowerment. Part of that is that we need to be at the table. We need to be involved in the game. We need to have mentorship and empowerment program opportunities specifically tailored for us because we need to feel welcome. And we can talk about a number of groups in San Antonio and outside of San Antonio when we're the only one that's there, or we're less than 2 or 5%. It goes back to what we've talked about this whole time. We're having to work harder. And sometimes when you're working so hard, you're not able to absorb all of the benefits because you're exhausted. But when you're in a group that's tailored for us, it's like going to an HBCU or an all-girls school. You don't have to, what I say, the clutter, the extra noise to have to get through. When we have those groups, we know we can be our authentic self. And we can also build our skill set. Understanding we have to work in this world. San Antonio is an incredible community, but we are the sub-minority. I think, Benita, you said that. Sometimes we do always forget that because people say, well, I don't see any African Americans. Well, we're only 8% of the population and 2% of the business owners out here. So we're going to expect to see 20 or 30 of us. We all know if it's not an MLK event, a Juneteenth event, or a concert or a church, we're not going to see the majority of us in the room. So with that said, that's why it's important that we create these environments. But let me say this, because I know that's difficult to do because we're with a small population. When we walk into a room and I see other people who look like me, I don't care if I don't know you or know you. I'm going to speak to every one of them before I leave that room. I have had that as my goal of mission. Been kicked in the teeth a couple of times because people didn't want to speak to me, but I'm like, that's all right. I'm going to be like the loud cousin or the country cousin, as they call it. It is incumbent upon us to connect with each other, and especially in our community when there's so few of us. Quick story, I know we're short on time. I was in New York City. My sister-in-law asked me, she goes, I see you speak to every African American person. By the way, I'm married to this Italian guy, so that's why she's asking. And she goes, "Do you know these people?" I say, "Yeah, I do. Those are my brothers and sisters." Everywhere I go, if I see another African American, I automatically speak. I have taught my children to do that. Why? Because first of all, you never know where your blessing is going to come from. Two, I need to acknowledge that brother or sister because I don't know what kind of day they've had or been having. I need somebody to lift them up. So for me, part of this mentorship and empowerment programs, we're lifting each other up. And we're living in a crazy time right now that we need an extra step stool to lift each other up. That's why it's important that, as I like to say, representation matters. And I love it, as they say, if you don't let us at the table, we'll build our own damn table. That is what you're doing today by having us in this space to discuss this openly and honestly.
Absolutely. I got, goosebumps and all. That's all. All right, Benita. This is you, ma'am. You're going to take us home. Let's do it.
Yes.
You want me
So,
to read it or you're good? No, you're good.
Go ahead and read it because
I'll
it has
read it
sets
off.
me up. Thank you.
How can corporate leadership foster an environment that encourages and supports Black women and their endeavors to drive transformational change within an organization?
Yeah, so this is a woolly mammoth, right? But what comes to me really is allyship. I think there's one thing that we don't talk about quite enough. These corporate organizations, they have the all the interest group, you got the women's group, you got the Black group, you have all the things. However, if we're the only ones talking to each other about our challenges, we're the only ones. And so I think it's so important for us to foster more allyship, getting people who are outside the culture to get in on the conversation, to start to understand what the challenges are so they can start to observe what's happening. I mean, I coach so many women in corporate who, and Margaret talked about it, like, you are labeled easily as being combative. I had this one sticks out to mind, client who pretty much just told a colleague she was pretty much not going through proper channels. I'm gonna say that. And she just talked to her colleague about it. And the colleague went to, they had different managers. She went to her boss, and then her boss came to her and told her that she was being combative. Now, this boss was not anywhere in the conversation, did not view the conversation, but she simply took the word of her colleague. Her colleague was white, and this client of mine was African American. And so I've seen this over and over again. And so us being labeled as combative, or if we're withdrawn because we're going through something, then something's wrong. I had another client, the same thing. And it's so there is not enough conversation outside of our culture for people to be those allies and being invited in to the conversation. So I think that is really so important so that we can begin to have other people to acknowledge what's happening outside of ourselves in order to bring that transformational change. And somebody needs to say, hey, I saw that wasn't right. Because when we say it, it's something else, right? And so we really I believe, really need to have that support and really be intentional about building that allyship within organizations.
Love it. Perfect. And you're so true. If we just keep talking to ourselves, it's not going to change anything. And so, yeah, definitely. I always talk about soft advocacy. Sometimes we want something so bad, we don't realize that we become a little bit aggressive in our advocacy, and people don't hear us past that aggression. And so I absolutely, feel like that is so appropriate to build that allyship. So I just want to thank you for those that have stuck it out with us those extra few minutes. I knew we would go over a little bit. I was refusing to let go of any of it. It will be recorded and sent out. But for the panel, for the guests that are here, do you have any questions for the panelists? And you can just unmute and ask. It's a intimate enough group. You can unmute and ask. And I'll give it 5 good Mississippis before I go to the next slide. And 5 Mississippis. All right. And so to our panelists, did we not say something, or do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share, to be recorded forever, as my grandmother says, in the Webernet? Any final thoughts?
I'd just like to say, as a reminder, as women, let's focus on finding our strengths. Let's focus on taking care of ourselves first. Let's focus on supporting our sisters and brothers because we can and because we should. What we know for sure, we are very strong people. We come from a long line of determination, grit, and all those wonderful adjectives that we're defined as. We've always had to make a way out of no way. But what I'd like for us to do is strongly focus on our mental health. All those things we're asking us to do, let's put our mental health first. Physical and mental health is the new wealth. When we have that, we are a jump start ahead. And to be able to pass on that wealth of health to our children and to our children's children, that's the blessing and the legacy that we can lead, that will build upon everything else in our lives.
Awesome. Beautifully said. Thank you, Margaret. Ladies.
I just want to say thank you, Nisi, for providing this platform for us getting the opportunity to share, like I said, give our testimonies on how we've been tested in life and how we are in the ongoing battle to, survive those many tests that are put before us. But it's always empowering to hear other people's stories of triumph and success. And so I'm always blessed to hear from amazing women who are doing great things and making connections. I would just say, we just have to watch out for ourselves, like we said, but my organization is really about our girls. And so just make sure we're watching our youth because they are dealing with a lot of things right now and they really need our support, but also remember that they're watching us. And so I'm speaking for them, passing on their message that they are watching us and they want to be successful in their own ways, in their unique ways. We might not always agree with the ways they want to be successful, but they are trying to do those things, but providing them an opportunity to have a village of support is really important. So just keep our babies in mind and just, ladies, thank you so much for everything you're doing in the community.
Perfect. Thank you, Brandy. Benita.
I'm going to piggyback some sentiments. This has been amazing, Nisi. Thank you so much. The questions were just deep and thought-provoking, and this has been great. I just want to just kind of draw out what the other two ladies said as I close is to remember that it is important. You've got to put yourself first every single day in order to show up for the people that you were to serve. And Brandy reminded me what's been so important to me as having a daughter is to break the cycle, because I didn't grow up seeing my mother take care of herself and her mental health and her wellness, and I didn't learn to do the same. And so I have an intention to break that cycle for her to see me taking care of myself so that she can have permission to do the same. So it's just so important to remember, we're just not doing this for ourselves. As Brandy said, we're doing it for the next generation. If you don't have a daughter, you're doing it for a niece, a neighbor, somebody who's seeing you, to know that, hey, there's things that we've gone through, and changing the narrative. What am I going to do differently? Just because you grew up in it doesn't mean you have to continue it. And I think the other thing is that we've got to learn how to ask for help. We've got to learn, we can't work in silos. It's important to have these conversations, to find a sisterhood. Don't give up. If you kiss a frog and you looking for a prince, and when I say that, I mean a friend, and it's a frog, that's okay. Keep going out. Don't think all women, I tried to make relationships and women are messy or whatever. No, no, no. You just ran into the wrong people. There are great women out there. There's great in every place. And so it's so important, especially if you're in business, not to be in a silo. Seek support in all kinds, mental, physical, business, emotional. Seek that support, and don't be okay with being by yourself, because we're not alone. You are not alone. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. My heart is full. I am overwhelmed by your support, and I really appreciate you taking your time, extra time today, and being on this panel with us for this discussion. I have a sneaky suspicion this is just the beginning. If you've worked with me, you know that I typically don't do little small things. I like to do a lot of big things, and so be on the lookout for that email soon. Everything will be recorded, everything will be sent out. Please share this recording once you get it. We don't want to keep it to ourselves. Share it on the platforms in which you represent the most. Any other questions, you'll have to send it via email. Thank you all so much for sticking around, staying through it. I'm going to go